Welcome to One Breath Wisdom, the podcast for therapists, healers, and soul-led space holders, ready to lead from wholeness, not burnout. I am Lisa McNett, founder of One Breath Institute and co-creator of the One Breath Method. Each week, I will be sharing trauma-informed insight, somatic tools, and real stories from the healing path, sometimes solo, sometimes with our co-founder, Deborah Dickey, and sometimes with special guests walking this path in their own powerful way. Together, we will explore how healing, embodiment, and presence can transform the way we live, lead, and care for others without losing ourselves. Let's take a breath and begin. Hello, and welcome to One Breath Wisdom. I am your host, Lisa McNett, founder of One Breath Institute. And today I want to talk about something that most of us have heard many times before, and that is the importance of prioritizing yourself, the importance of self-care. You might be already thinking, yeah, I know. Self-care is one of those topics that gets talked about all the time. But today I want to approach it from a slightly different perspective, especially for those of you who are in the role of holding space for others. So if you're a therapist, a coach, a practitioner, a facilitator, or really anyone who spends time caring for and supporting people, this is an incredibly important topic. At One Breath Institute, and personally, one of my core philosophies is this: your presence determines the space that you are able to hold for someone else. The quality of your presence directly impacts the experience another person has when they sit down with you. So that leads to a really powerful question. What actually is presence? It's a word that gets used a lot, but what does it really mean? And how do we actually become more present? When I reflect on presence, I experience it as a state of being. It is a state where I am open, I am receptive, my mind is relatively quiet. There may be thoughts, but if they are there, they're simply connected to what the person in front of me is sharing. There's no internal agenda, there's no trying to fix or control. I'm simply with them, listening, receiving, meeting them where they are. And when someone feels that level of presence, something powerful happens. They feel seen, they feel safe, they feel met. And this is where self-care becomes incredibly important, because presence is not something that you can force. Presence is something I have found that naturally arises when your nervous system is regulated, when you feel connected to your body, when you have taken care of, when you are taking care of yourself, right? Because if you're exhausted, if you're overwhelmed, if you're scattered, if you're running on empty, if you have a bellyache or a headache, it becomes much harder to truly be present. Your mind may be racing. Your body oftentimes will feel tense or will be screaming for your attention because there's something that needs your attention inside, internally. We have to meet those internal needs before we can really meet the external. So part of you might be someplace else. If we look at it this way, self-care is not a luxury. It is not just bubble baths and tea. It is a responsibility, especially for those of us who hold space for others. And I want to share this also from the perspective of someone who's been working in the health and wellness and healing field for almost 20 years. One thing I have seen over and over and over again is this: We are much more able to be present when we actually feel good in our bodies. Presence is not a mental skill. It is a whole body experience. So when the body feels heavy, stagnant, tired, foggy, the mind follows that same pattern. But when the body feels energized, supported, and clear, it becomes much easier for the mind to settle and for us to truly be present with another person. There are some very simple foundations that support this. Our bodies need movement. These bodies are meant to move every single day. Many therapists, coaches, and practitioners spend long hours sitting. I often hear people say that they don't have time to move because they're seeing back-to-back clients all day. But even 1 minute between clients can make a huge difference. Standing up, taking a few deeper breaths, shaking out the body, letting the shoulders move. Even a brief reset like that helps the nervous system to shift, shakes off what just was there with the previous client, and helps the body feel more alive. And that means you are more available and more present for the next person sitting in front of you. Another important piece is what we put into our bodies. You literally are what you eat. The quality of the food that we eat often determines how we feel physically and mentally. And third, our brain requires about 20% of the oxygen that we breathe, which means breath, nourishment, and circulation all play an important role in clarity and focus. So when you think about self-care from this perspective, it really comes down to a few simple foundations. We need breath, we need movement, and we need nourishment every single day. And yet so many people are living in a kind of stagnation. And it can be hard to overcome the inertia of that. When habits have been in place for a really long time, even when we know they're not serving us, it can feel difficult to shift them. You already know that. So I'm inviting you to have a little bit of honest self-reflection, because there can be a bit of misalignment between what we encourage in others and how we care for ourselves. And I am not saying that with judgment, just to bring awareness. We might talk with someone about nourishing their body or moving their body more, while at the same time, we're not really giving those things to ourselves. And when we begin to bring our own lives into greater alignment with what we teach or guide others towards, something really powerful happens. Not only do we feel better, but our message carries more integrity. There is a congruence between what we say and how we live. And that alignment deepens the quality of our presence. It also deepens the trust, the healing relationship between you and your clients and the other people in your life. And we can't talk about presence without talking about breath. Circling back to breath. Breath is one of the most immediate ways that we can return to ourselves. Earlier, I mentioned that the brain requires about 20% of the oxygen that we breathe in. So the quality of our breathing directly impacts the clarity of our thinking, our energy, and our ability to be present. And yet many people are walking around breathing very shallowly. Breath gets restricted by stress, by posture, poor posture, by long hours of sitting, and even emotional tension that we might not even realize that we are holding. But when someone pauses and reconnects with their breath, something begins to shift. The nervous system settles, the mind begins to quiet, the body receives more oxygen and circulation, and suddenly we're a little more here. Sometimes it's as simple as pausing between clients, feeling your feet on the ground, and taking a few slower, deeper, intentional breaths. Letting the body reset, letting the mind reset, and then stepping into the next moment with more awareness. Because presence doesn't come from trying harder. Presence comes from returning to yourself. And breath is one of the most reliable ways we can do that on a consistent basis. So as we close today, I want to come back to the idea that I started with. At One Breath Institute, one of our core philosophies is that your presence determines the space you are able to hold for someone else. And presence doesn't just happen by accident. Presence is supported by how we care for ourselves, by movement, by nourishing food, by breath, by taking even small moments throughout the day to reconnect with our bodies and our awareness. When we feel better in our bodies, the mind is clearer. The nervous system is more settled. And we naturally become more present. And that presence is one of the greatest gifts that we can offer to another human being. So, if you are someone who holds space for others, whether as a practitioner, a therapist, a coach, or simply as someone who deeply cares about people, remember that taking care of yourself is not separate from the work. It is the work. So before we finish today, I want to invite you to just take a moment with me. Wherever you are, if it feels comfortable, allow your body to soften just a little bit. Maybe stand up, let your feet drop into the floor a little bit more deeply. Take a slow breath in through your nose and gently exhale out through the mouth. Again, breathing in and letting the breath go out through the mouth. Notice your body. Notice the space around you. And just for this moment, allow yourself to arrive here with breath. We'll take a few more breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And maybe on the exhale, letting some sound move through. I find my body is moving. I'm moving my shoulders. Does your body want to move as you breathe in? Does it want to make any sound as you breathe out? You can continue this practice as long as you'd like, and you can come back to this practice over and over and over again. It's short, it's simple, and it will help you reconnect with your body, reconnect with your presence. So thank you for being here and for listening to One Breath Wisdom. Until next time, take care of yourself. Thank you for listening to One Breath Wisdom. If something in today's episode spoke to you, I would love to know it. Send me a message on Instagram at One Breath Institute or at Lisa McNett, and please share the episode with someone else who needs to hear it. Remember, you are not here to carry it all. You are here to come home to yourself, one breath at a time. Until next time, take a breath and be well.